So friends, with the time he has left, should Special Counsel Jack Smith indict Donald Trump's co-conspirators? Folks like Rudy Giuliani, Sidney Powell, John Eastman, and the others? Well, let's not bury the lead. The answer is yes. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So friends, yesterday we talked about the new reporting regarding how Special Counsel Jack Smith may be in the process of, quote, winding down, close quote, Donald Trump's criminal cases, his federal prosecutions. Here is just a little bit of that new reporting, this from NPR. Headline, Special Counsel Jack Smith taking steps to wind down federal cases against Trump. And that article begins, Donald Trump started this year fighting 2 federal prosecutions that threatened to send him to prison, but he will end it free and clear of his most significant criminal legal problems. With his resounding victory at the polls and a long-standing Justice Department policy against prosecuting a sitting president, the key question is not if, but when prosecutors move to dismiss or delay his federal election interference case in Washington, D.C. Trump recently said he would fire Special Counsel Jack Smith within 2 seconds after he returned to the White House. Now, that won't be necessary to bring his federal criminal troubles to an end. Smith is taking steps to end both federal cases against Trump before the president-elect takes office, according to a source familiar with the Justice Department deliberations. And friends, we also talked yesterday about how, while Jack Smith may be winding down the criminal cases against Donald Trump, he is probably also gearing up to issue his special counsel report. And then at the end of yesterday's Justice Matters video, I previewed the related issue, the topic for today, and that is, what should Jack Smith do with Donald Trump's criminal associates, with his co-conspirators who were included in Donald Trump's federal election subversion indictment in D.C., but who have not yet been indicted? What should Jack Smith do with them? He should indict them. Indeed, I suggest he must indict them, and we'll talk about why that is in a minute. But first of all, who are Donald Trump's criminal associates, his co-conspirators in Trump's efforts to steal the 2020 election, in Donald Trump's decision to launch an attack on the U.S. Capitol to try to stop the certification of Joe Biden's win the last time around? Well, they are criminals like Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell, John Eastman, Kenneth Chesebro, and others. So friends, I've maintained for a very long time that Donald Trump's co-conspirators in Trump's efforts to steal the 2020 presidential election would be indicted by Jack Smith. I have maintained that for many, many months. In fact, I think I said it shortly after Jack Smith issued the first federal indictment of Donald Trump in D.C. for trying to steal the 2020 presidential election. And here is why I have maintained all along that Jack Smith would indict those co-conspirators when the time is right. We know why he didn't up front, because his prosecution of Donald Trump was built for speed. He hoped to get it through the court system and get Donald Trump convicted and sentenced long before the 2024 election. Obviously, the Supreme Court had other ideas. They put a stop to that, and they are complicit in inflicting a criminal precedent on the American people yet again. But I digress. So here's why I maintained all along Jack Smith would indict those co-conspirators. In Donald Trump's indictments, federal indictments in D.C., there are two, the original one and then the superseding or subsequent indictment. He listed a bunch of co-conspirators. And when he listed those co-conspirators, even though he didn't name them, we know who they are because they're identified as, for example, Donald Trump's lawyer. We knew that was Rudy Giuliani, et cetera. When he announced to the world in that public document, that indictment, that these 6 people, these 6 unindicted co-conspirators were part of Donald Trump's crimes to try to steal the election from the American people. When he announced that he had the goods on them, he had ample evidence to try and convict them, which is why he included them in the indictment. I said, okay, then it's just a matter of time before he indicts them, because he wouldn't put that in a public-facing document that these 6 people were part of Donald Trump's criminal conspiracy. They committed federal crimes to try to steal a presidential election together with Donald Trump. He wouldn't have put that out there if he didn't intend to hold them accountable. So I have known all along, strongly believed, they would be indicted. And so why am I saying Jack Smith should, indeed must, indict them now? Well, first of all, Jack Smith only has until January 20th, 2025, because Donald Trump has promised to fire Jack Smith, quote, within 2 seconds, close quote, of being sworn in as president. So time is running out. And friends, here's the other critically important reason Jack Smith must indict Donald Trump's co-conspirators, because that will force Donald Trump's hand. What do I mean by that? Well, if Donald Trump wants to get rid of the cases against his criminal associates, his co-conspirators, the folks who helped him, criminally helped him try to steal the 2020 election, if he wants to get rid of those cases after he's sworn in as president, he will have to engage in corruption to do it. And that corruption can take one of 2 forms. One, he can appoint an attorney general who's willing to do Donald Trump's criminal and corrupt bidding, and order the attorney general to dismiss the criminal cases against Trump's co-conspirators who tried to steal the election from the American people. That will be corruption any way you cut it. Or 2, Donald Trump could deliver a corrupt pardon and say, I recognize Jack Smith has indicted all of these folks. I'm delivering all of my co-conspirators, the people I enlisted in my criminal scheme to steal a presidential election, I'm delivering them a pardon. That, friends, would be a corruptly delivered pardon. And I maintain any honest broker of the law, a federal judge, deciding whether that kind of a pardon was okay or not, would find it is void as against public policy. It is corrupt. Even Bill Barr, somebody I rarely cite as legal authority for anything, even Bill Barr said in, I believe, Senate testimony under oath, a president can't do that. That would be illegal. Now, we're not going to go all the way up to the Supreme Court and talk about what might happen up there for the moment. And here's why. Just bear with me here for a minute. We have to keep talking about how the rule of law is supposed to work, how it is intended to be applied against criminals like Donald Trump. Because if we stop talking about how the rule of law is supposed to work and we just leave Donald Trump and his criminal associates to their own devices to commit all the crimes they want, then we're normalizing it, we're excusing it, and we can never do that. You know, people get very frustrated because they say, well, Glenn, you keep talking about how the rule of law is supposed to apply. It never seems to apply that way to Donald Trump. Exactly. I agree. But we have to keep talking about how it's supposed to apply, because we are in the darkness now, but we will come into the light again. So I maintain that if Donald Trump wants to kill the cases against his co-conspirators once Jack Smith indicts them, it will be a product of corruption. It will actually be a crime. It will be an ongoing conspiracy that Donald Trump is in. It will be obstruction of justice. It will be any number of crimes if he delivers a pardon to his criminal associates, his co-conspirators, in the event Jack Smith indicts them. And then finally, there's another really important reason, and this one is a little bit down in the legal weeds, so bear with me. This is going to feel a little like a team justice law school class for the next few minutes, but I really want to include this in our discussion. There's another reason Jack Smith should indict these co-conspirators, and it's because of the statute of limitations. That's just a fancy word for a time limit that is put on the Department of Justice's ability to prosecute somebody, and it's typically 5 years from the time the crime is committed. Prosecutors have 5 years to bring charges, and if they don't bring charges in 5 years, they can't bring charges thereafter. They are timed out. The statute of limitations would prohibit somebody from being indicted and being tried for their crimes. If the prosecutors wait too long, they wait more than 5 years. Here's the thing. If Jack Smith makes the decision not to bring indictments against Donald Trump's co-conspirators, well then by the time Donald Trump is out of office, assuming he serves all 4 years, these crimes will have timed out. We will be well beyond the statute of limitations, and the Rudy Giuliani, Sidney Powells, and others will be free and clear of all of these federal prosecutions that could have been brought right now if Jack Smith makes the decision on his own not to indict the co-conspirators. But if he indicts them now, within the statute of limitations, within the 5 years, and Donald Trump corruptly kills those cases in one way or another, guess what? The statute of limitations might not come into play, might not prohibit a prosecution even after the 5-year mark. Why is that? Well, there's this general principle in the law that you can't benefit from your own wrongdoing. Forfeiture by wrongdoing, it's sometimes called. Let me give you a more concrete and easily understood example. If somebody is indicted and they show up for their first day of trial and they're supposed to be tried for crimes that they allegedly committed, but then they flee before the second day of trial, and they remain sort of in abscondence, gone, and the prosecutors and the Marshals Service and all of the law enforcement agencies can't find them. And 5 years passes. And then on the 5-year and 1 day mark, they come back and they say, aha, I am now beyond the statute of limitations because you didn't try me within 5 years. Well, then the principle of forfeiture by wrongdoing comes in. You forfeit your right to assert the statute of limitations because your absence was a product of your own wrongdoing. That same principle, by way of analogy, I argue, I contend, and I would make this argument in court all day, every day, that same principle should apply to somebody who is delivered and accepts a corrupt pardon to try to avoid being prosecuted for your crimes, such that the statute of limitation pauses. Press pause, because the only reason Donald Trump's co-conspirators were not tried for their crimes, if Jack Smith indicts them now, would be corruption by Donald Trump that is also attributable to Donald Trump's co-conspirators. It would be part of an ongoing criminal scheme to try to help Trump's co-conspirators avoid being brought to trial. So there would be a good, strong legal argument, a viable argument, that nope, statute of limitations didn't expire. Prosecution of his co-conspirators is not barred or prohibited because the prosecutors took too much time, because the only reason they took too much time was Donald Trump corruptly delivering and the co-conspirators corruptly receiving a pardon. So friends, I hope I explained that well. I hope I made that understandable. And let's finish with something positive. I think every day from here on out, we're going to have to finish with something positive, something encouraging, because goodness knows we need to find reasons to stay positive, to stay engaged, to keep fighting for what's right. And here's today's message, and we'll finish with this. When darkness descends, we put on our effing night goggles and fight like hell, because the light will come again. And because justice matters. Friends, as always, please stay safe. Please stay tuned. And I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.